Okay. Part 5. Researching rituals and an update on the purge. After Herschel left, Sylvester slowly looked around the side. Well, considering that we've received advice from a royal, I think we should take the joint research approach. Of course, you students are going to be doing the actual research, and I imagine that Rosamund is going to be spearheading it since she's a scholar, an Archduke candidate, and our High Bishop. Rosamund, what do you think about all this? Well, if we need to pair up with another duchy to improve Ehrenfest's reputation and make ourselves more trustworthy, then I would certainly like to work with Dunkelfelger. Sylvester eyed me carefully. But why Dunkelfelger? If we want others to believe our research, would Drwonkel not be a better choice? If we work with Dunkelfelger, then I can rely on Lady Hannelore. I have no such friends in Drwonkel. Though my main reason for wanting to work with Dunkelfelger is that its Archduke candidates and apprentice knights have the divine protections of multiple gods, making them ideal test subjects. Drwonkel might have been a better choice for research about magic tools and circles, but this was about divine protections from the gods. In other words, they wouldn't provide good samples. Not to mention, I continued, Dunkelfelger has Clarissa, Hartmut's fiancée, who wishes to become my retainer. As an apprentice scholar, she should make things progress a lot more smoothly, and if our research produces good results, then we will have an easier time summoning her to Ehrenfest. Clarissa's parents will surely want to cancel her engagement now that Hartmut had joined Ehrenfest's temple as the high priest. However, if our joint research improved the public's perception of the temple, or at least conveyed that our temple differed from those of the other duchies, then perhaps the problem will resolve itself? Not to mention, Clarissa is an archnoble. If she marries Hartmut and comes to Ehrenfest, then we will be able to learn more about how top-ranking duchies socialize. She's going to be a crucial asset for Ehrenfest now that we are expected to behave as a top-ranking duchy. Yeah, we'll need someone like her, and soon. Let's try to avoid the engagement getting cancelled, Sylvester agreed. Our problem was severe enough that the royal family had taken it upon themselves to interject. Ehrenfest needed to learn to act like a top-ranking duchy, and the only ones who could teach us were those already from top-ranking duchies. Soon after Sylvester agreed that we should pair up with Dunkelfelger, Florencia instructed her scholars to prepare some ink and paper, then looked at me. You said that you wished to reveal only the harmless aspect of this research. Please tell me which parts you think match that definition. Certainly. First of all, one can raise one's chances of receiving divine protections through prayer, though this will not work unless those prayers are sincere. One also needs to offer mana to the gods. Those are all the harmless theories I think we should research with Dunkelfelger. As an additional advantage, we should be able to prove our theories by comparing the apprentice knights in Dunkelfelger who did receive divine protections with those who didn't. However, I continued, as Professor Herschel said, we will also need some information specific to Ehrenfest so that Dunkelfelger does not claim all of our research for themselves. To that end, we will add that during the ritual, the magic circle must be filled entirely with mana, even if men nobles and lay nobles must use rejuvenation potions to do so. Rejuvenation potions, Florencia repeated, blinking in surprise. As a member of the Archducal family, she had probably never lacked the mana necessary to fill a magic circle. The magic circle for retaining divine protection is large and complex, no? According to Professor Gundolf, lay nobles and men nobles struggle to fill the entire thing with their mana, so they prioritize filling the parts with their elements instead. This way, they can secure the protection of the primary gods as long as they state the prayer correctly. Unless those students use rejuvenation potions, they will not be able to fill the circle completely and acquire protections outside of their elements. This is my first time hearing this, Florencia said, her eyes widening. Incidentally, one's curricula at the Royal Academy were dependent on one's mana capacity. A lot of content was omitted from the lay nobles' lessons about rituals and such to accommodate their lack of mana. Furthermore, in Ehrenfest, we speak a prayer when replenishing the foundational magic. Do we not? I asked. As it turns out, this is not the case in other duchies. I expect that this is why Wilfried received so many divine protections. How were things done in Frembeltag? We did not pray either. I was surprised to see others doing it when I performed my first mana replenishment in Ehrenfest, Florencia replied. She had simply gone with the flow and stated the prayer while channeling her mana. It seems that Ehrenfest very well might be the only duchy that still prays during mana replenishment. You know, we haven't always done it, Sylvester interjected, his arms crossed and his brow furrowed. Wait, what? It's not an age-old tradition, I exclaimed. How far back does it go, then? Father started it around the time Constance was married into another duchy. I was second or third year, as I recall. Does that mean you earned divine protections from gods other than the primary ones, I asked? Still surprised that the tradition was so new. I'm not sure if our praying was the reason, but yeah. Which ones did you get, Father? Wilfried asked. Sylvester merely sputtered in response, then his eyes wandered evasively around the room. Oh, Sylvester, Florencia said with a teasing smile, your own son is asking. Why not give him an answer? There was a pause before Sylvester finally conceded. Shoot. Lebesque, Hilfe, and Glucklitat? Whatever. The former was the mischievous, prank-loving goddess of binding, who stole threads from Dragoner to bind men and women together, while the latter was the god of trials, who granted good luck to those who overcame ordeals. Hearing that Sylvester earned those protections in the Royal Academy, it became kind of obvious that he was all about romance. I'm sure he prayed just as sincerely as Feline does to Mestinora. In any case, Rosemine, Florencia said, can you tell me what you consider to be the more harmful areas of your research? I was hoping to investigate whether students can use prayer and dedicate their mana to get more divine protections after coming of age. My retainers are now frequently visiting the temple, so I will test my theory on them. Perhaps we could rescue Angelica, who had failed to obtain even the most basic divine protections in her student days. I was also curious to see if we could secure a few more for Daniel. Considering that Feline had received more protection, it was fully possible that those going to the temple would get more as well. Furthermore, I wish to test whether the ritual can successfully be performed in duchy temples rather than just at the Royal Academy. If all goes well, we can secure more divine protections than any other duchy. It will be a significant boon for us mana-wise if adults could obtain divine protections within Ehrenfest. Sylvester stroked his chin, looking unconvinced. So you say, but Ehrenfest doesn't even know the magic circle necessary for the ritual, unless... You haven't made one, have you? Not yet, but I drew the circle on my diptych during the ritual, so I will soon. I already had a drawing of the magic circle on hand. As long as I was careful, I was sure that I could recreate it. The process wouldn't even take that long because if we made it stealthily at home, we wouldn't need to include all the fake lines to disguise it. But wait, you have a stand at the center of the circle, and the fake lines and patterns would have made copying it down impossible. Especially for someone your height. How did you record it? The answer was simple. I had seen it from the top of the shrine, and the real parts of the circle had been shining with my mana. That didn't make what I had done any more normal, though. Based on what Hersher had told me, the statues moving aside and opening a path during the ritual was strange enough already. It was something that I absolutely needed to discuss with Ferdinand before telling anyone else. Rosemine, how did you record it? Sylvester asked again, leaning forward. I worked my brain at full capacity in search of a way out of my current predicament. I needed to come up with a half-truth that wouldn't land me in hot water if Ferdinand gave me permission to share what had actually happened. The gods told me to. What? The gods? Yes, I heard them whisper to me. Girl, do you really think he's gonna believe you? I replied with a smile. Write that circle down, they said. It wasn't a complete lie. After all, they had made a way for me to ascend the shrine. But since Sylvester, and every other person in the room for that matter, was giving me highly suspicious looks, I moved to expertly change the subject. By the way, how did the purge go? In an instant, everyone widened their eyes and turned to the Archducal couple. This news was of the utmost importance for us for those of us in the Royal Academy. We all wanted an explanation. Sylvester's expression hardened. We sent word before, but the purge has finished for now. We've eliminated those who had given their names and sworn loyalty to the first wife of another duchy, as well as those who'd worked to bring misfortune to Ehrenfest. Those who have not given their names or to anyone has been imprisoned and are currently under investigation. We all swallowed. According to Sylvester, they were busy with the cleanup, that being the investigations and carrying out the punishments. That was why Karstedt, as the Knight Commander, hadn't been able to leave Ehrenfest to come here with Sylvester. As for those who gave their name and were executed, first were Guy Gerlach and his family. Then there was... Sylvester went on to list those who had been executed for giving their name to Georgine. I recognized most of them as the people whom Matthias and Lorenz had warned us about. To my surprise, the head count was fewer than 10, even considering spouses and immediate family who were guilty by association. This news came as a great relief. At this rate, not many of the former Veronica faction children would need to give their names to survive. Thus, the only students who must give their names to save themselves are Matthias, Lorenz, Miriella, Barthold, and Cassandra, Sylvester said. I can't yet make any guarantees for the others, but they should be able to return to their families. Barthold was planning to give his name to Wilfrid, while Cassandra would give hers to Charlotte. The remaining 3 were giving theirs to me, which came as quite a surprise considering what had been discussed. Unfortunately, Guy Gerlach blew himself up, Sylvester continued. Bonifacius charged forward from the vanguard and attempted to restrain him with the staff, but the explosion came too quickly. I'm told that a single hand was the most that could be salvaged for evidence. The crest on his ring and the mana within confirmed it as being belonging to the Geeb at least. I understood that Geeb Gerlach was Matthias' father, but still, he had been loyal to Georgine and had continuously targeted me, so I was glad to hear that he was gone. It was safe to say that I and all those close to me were going to be much safer from now on. We will finish investigating our prisoners and settle their punishments while you are all at the Royal Academy, Sylvester explained. I expect that any students whose families are only receiving fines and such will be able to return home by the end of winter. The children of those who are receiving harsher punishments, such as long-term manual labor, will spend that time in the castle dormitory. This is also true for the children being housed in the orphanage. Matthias' warning had resulted in the purge happening much earlier than was initially scheduled, but things had gone more or less as planned. Most of the children who had been worried about never seeing their parents again will be reunited with them before long. How many children ended up in the orphanage? I asked. Have food and mattresses been delivered to them? Yeah, seems like Hartman knew you would be worried about them. He's been giving me regular reports on how they're doing. Sylvester then turned to one of the scholars who came forward and gave me a stack of documents. There were 17 children who had ended up being sent to the orphanage, and a table had been drawn up detailing their names, ages, parents' names, and what Wilma thought about them. As expected, many were emotionally unstable. Meanwhile, those who were 5 and 6 years old were gritting their teeth and refusing to show emotion, or otherwise fighting back the urge to cry, perhaps due to having been raised as nobles. My heart ached at the thought of all those poor children crying for their families. I understood that pain and sadness all too well, and memories of my separation from my own family flashed through my mind. "And what of the playroom, Mother?" Charlotte asked. The children there were all gathered in one place, and once the purge was complete, their families were allowed to come and fetch them one by one. Florencia replied, the purge was carried out on such a large scale and involved many scholars in attendance, so having the children all in one place was convenient for protecting them. Subsequently, the children of whose families had ended up being imprisoned and therefore hadn't come for them were left in the playroom, where they discussed the purge and their futures. Only a small number would need to give their names to survive, and many conversations were had over what they should do next. "And what happened to Nicholas?" I asked. Nicholas was the son of Karsted's second wife, Trudelade, and while we had barely spoken, he was still my half-brother. I had always been curious about the glances he gave me. It was like he wanted to say something but couldn't. "He is in the playroom," Florencia informed me. Karsted said they would discuss his future once Trudelade's punishment has been decided. That said, Karsted has much to do as a result of the purge, and he is going to hunt the Lord of Winter soon, so I expect that their conversation will not be for quite some time. He must really be scared. As I thought about Nicholas being all alone and afraid, Wilfred spoke up. "So, we know the purge is going as planned, Father. Did you get to look into any of the memories? Into the memories of any of those who had of any of those names sworn to Lady Georgine?" "Yeah, several, though there was nothing of any use." Several of the names sworn had apparently blown themselves up the moment they saw the Knight's Order approaching them. It would have been simple enough to kill them outright, but capturing them alive had been crucial to secure evidence and confirm their connection to Georgine. Of course, this was much easier said than done. Those who had given their name to my mother or just committed petty crimes put up some resistance, but overall they were captured without issue. As for those who had gave their names to my sister, we weren't able to capture any of them properly, be it because they blew themselves up as soon as they saw the Knight's Order, or because Bonifacius went a little too far when fighting them. We didn't get many heads we could search through. Apparently there were restrictions involved when it came to peering into the memories of the deceased. Back when Ferdinand had looked through mine during my days as a Blue Shrine Maiden, he had given instructions so that I would show him what he wanted to see. You couldn't give instructions to the dead, though, and the memories of the deceased quickly degraded over time. On top of that, the memories that remained offered very little evidence, Sylvester continued. We learned that Georgine visited Gerlach and that the two were engaged in a crazed celebration over something she said. But I'm told we still don't know what that something was. The problem is that the vision and hearing of every person we've examined has been distorted as if someone grabbed their memories and twisted them up. "What in the world?" I said. "Can you do that? Like, intentionally? Is there some restrictions about peering into the memories of those who had given their names? I needed to know since I had already accepted some names myself." Sylvester frowned. "Do you remember Matthias' report mentioning that the fireplace was lit despite it being summer and the air was filled with a sweet scent?" "I do. What about it?" "A scholar who's an expert on drugs suspects that something called trog is to blame. It's a strong hallucinogenic plant that messes up one's memories. None grows in Ehrenfest, but students here at the Royal Academy are taught that it's very dangerous." Sylvester then let out a tired sigh. "My sister always came thoroughly prepared. She obviously took several precautions to make sure that nothing can be traced back to her. I'm terrified by how obsessed she must be and how much she must have learned to accomplish her goal, her objective. To think she had devised and enacted a plan to warp her name-sworn vassals' memories, knowing full well what we would do to them when they were caught. I was much too careless to be able to manage such an intricate scheme, that is, assuming I could even come up with one in the first place. I couldn't help but wish she would use her evident intellect for something more constructive than trying to steal someone else's duchy. The world was surely filled with so many more wondrous things, like she could try to construct a library or gather all the stories in the world or make new books. She's not going to do that. But she could use it for good, is what she's saying. I let out a weary sigh that was just like Sylvester's, finding Georgine's choice of obsession unfortunate. Meanwhile, Charlotte offered a gentle smile and words of consolation to her father, who was fighting for our duchy back at home. You may not have found concrete evidence within their memories, father, but you still succeeded in eliminating those who had given their name to another duchy. That is more than enough, no? If not for that warning from Matthias, the purge might not have succeeded at all. Charlotte, Sylvester said, staring at his daughter with an expression of surprise. She looked so much like her mother that she smiled softly back at him. Lady Georgina is no longer able to act freely in Ehrenfest. Guy Gerlach has been executed, so even if she wishes to obtain the foundational magic, there is no longer anyone who can make the necessary arrangements for her. Thus, do not feel so down. We should now focus on unifying Ehrenfest. Is that not right? Yeah, it is. Charlotte, we eliminated the vassals who were letting my sister act as she pleased. Moving forward, Ehrenfest is going to be safe for Rosemine. Indeed, we eliminated those who harmed my sister time and time again. That alone is enough, Charlotte said, her words softening the expression of not just Sylvester, but the knights who had accompanied the archducal couple as guards as well. Ehrenfest will probably experience a mana shortage for a while since we've executed 3 Giebs, but we're lucky enough to have a certain someone who's overflowing with mana. I might need to give my thanks and prayers to... how do I say this? Gluckletat, the god of trial, Sylvester said, looking at me with a grin. He then beckoned over a knight who stepped forward with a bag full of phase stones. These should cover you for a while. Channel out all the mana that's built up inside you and ease up on the compression. That should reduce your overall quantity down to a point where you can control it again. I certainly hadn't expected to hear that kind of advice from Sylvester, and as I stared at him in surprise, his expression turned wistful. This reminds me of when Ferdinand learned mana compression in his first year of school and completely overdid it. He was as puzzled as you are now when it became too much for him to control. In the end, he managed to resolve the issue by expending a ton of mana and compressing it less. From what I remember, anyway. His uncertainty left me feeling exceedingly concerned, but even so, his advice was highly valuable. I accepted the phase stones with a smile. I thank you ever so much for the advice, Sylvester. I'll give it a try. Okay. Dang, I'm almost halfway done with this darn thing. Didn't take me long at all. Finishing the Archduke candidate lessons. There were too many people gathered for us to clear the room and speak with Sylvester alone. Instead, it seemed best for us to save the details about Roderick's name-swearing and acquisition of new elements for later. All of the students who needed to offer their names to survive had already finished the ceremony for obtaining blessings, so there was no need to hurry. It could even wait until this year at the Royal Academy was complete. That's all I've got for you, Sylvester concluded. Everyone return to your rooms. I did as instructed, then started decompressing my mana and dumping it into phase stones. I would need to stop unconsciously condensing it from this point onward. But compressing my mana is how I'm used to containing it. Trying to picture it spread as wide and thin as possible is tough unless I really concentrate. During my commoner days, my very life had depended on how much I could compress my mana. Only by pushing my vessel to its absolute limits had I managed to survive. Now, however, I needed to decompress and expand my mana so that I could actually regain some control over it. Oh? As I continued to pour my mana into phase stones, I was suddenly hit with the sensation of entering a state of flow and a feeling like my body had gotten lighter. I instinctively understood this to be my staff's limit, so I expended just a bit more mana. Okay, that should be enough, I said. I really hoped it would be. The next day after breakfast, we gathered the students in the common room to discuss the details of the purge. Everyone knew about the archducal couple visiting the dormitory, so there was a sea of very harsh faces. The children of the former Veronica faction looked especially tense. Some were so pale that I had to wonder whether they were feeling lightheaded. As everyone knows, the Abbé visited last night, Wilfred said, exuding the utmost confidence as he began his explanation. That was because Professor Herscher requested the meeting, but he took the opportunity to discuss the purge as well. I want to share what he told us with you all. He continued by saying that all those who had offered their names to Georgine, the first wife of another duchy, had been executed. The others were being interrogated, and their punishments would be decided during the winter. The following 5 students must offer their names to not be executed alongside their families: Matthias, Lorenz, Miriella, Barthold, and Cassandra. The others may return to their families, although not immediately. Thank goodness, sighed the first year, whom Lenore had restrained before. I can endure the wait. I'm just glad that I'll get to see my family again. His words did wonders to brighten the atmosphere in the common room. I was pleased that the first year's family hadn't given their names to Georgine, and relieved that only a select few students were having to give their names to us. However, in contrast to my comfort, Barthold and Cassandra looked worryingly unwell. They had lost their families, and now they were each having to surrender their life to another. I could see that they were giving forced smiles, and they must have realized this the moment our eyes met. They quickly looked away, conscious that their true feelings weren't hidden enough. The children in the orphanage are going to be handled as we described previously, Wolfen continued. Those whose families are only being fined as punishment will be returned home after the academic year. But those whose families are receiving more substantial punishments, that is, menial labor and the like, will stay in the castle dormitory until their sentence is up. Not all punishments have been set in stone, so keep this in mind. By the time the announcement was over, the children who had been worried about never seeing their families again were all wearing such genuine smiles. My retainers didn't seem too dissatisfied either. Lady Rosemine, I turned to the voice calling my name and saw that Matthias and Lorenz were making their way over. Lenore and my other guard knights slid forward, all with particularly cold expressions. Brunhilde and Laisletta had their eyes narrowed, making for a very heavy atmosphere. Matthias and Lorenz knelt before the wall of guards. We have prepared our stones, Lady Rosemine, they said. You may summon us whenever you are prepared to accept our names. The sooner the better, then, I replied. We cannot allow this tension between you and my guard knights to fester. Laisletta, prepare a room. Matthias, Lorenz, will you be okay with my retainers being in attendance? Yes, my lady. My experience accepting Roderick's name was still fresh in my mind, so there was no need for me to make any further preparations. My guard knights all watched closely as Matthias was summoned to carry out the oath, then Lorenz. Both grimaced in pain the moment they were bound with my mana. You are both my retainers henceforth, I said. I trust that you will serve me dutifully as guard knights. It is our honor, my lady. Upon our return to the common room, Miriella led a long sigh. I would also like to give my name sooner rather than later, but I simply do not have good enough materials. She was giving Matthias and Lorenz envious looks, and was clearly keeping her distance from me. We were thinking of getting ingredients for you next Earth Day, with Lady Rosemine's permission, of course, Matthias said. I granted them my permission at once. It would be hard for those who had just lost their families to work alongside those rejoicing over their families having been spared. The sooner Miriella was made my retainer, the better. Yes, please do, I said. Now, Lenore, could you call Gracia over for me? Wait, milady, what do you intend to say to her? Riarda asked, fixing me with a hard glare. Well, I just intend to ask if she is still willing to serve me now that she no longer has to give her name. My retainers all fervently shook their heads. Lady Rose, my gracious family, is the former Veronica faction. She cannot serve you without giving her name, Cornelius said. That's right, Lady Rose. My people will only think it's safe for her to serve you once she's given her name, Judith agreed. Taking her as your retainer, despite her faction, will only reopen old wounds, and Gracia will suffer as a result, Lenore concluded. I could only hang my head as everyone joined forces against me. At the very least, could she not serve me exclusively in the Royal Academy like Theodore, I asked? I am struggling because of a lack of student attendance, as you know. Brunhilde and Laisletta both fell into thought. I already had enough attendance in the castle, but the Royal Academy was another story. They understood better than anyone how important it was for them to train their successors, but even so, they ultimately refused my suggestion with conflicted frowns. Those who serve Archducal family members in the Royal Academy end up their closest vassals. Considering this future, I must protest the idea of Gracia serving as a retainer without first giving you her name. There was no finding them on this matter. Matthias and Lorenz had their lives on the line here, but Gracia had a choice. I couldn't force her to give her my name. Roderick had said that name swearing was a ritual wherein a person swore their loyalty and surrendered their very life to their true lord or lady. I really had to doubt that Gracia had the resolve to make such a sacrifice. Know to pick your battles, my lady, Riarda said. Gracia cannot serve you unless she actively expresses her willingness to give her name. Understood. I made my way to my morning Archduke candidate classes. My retainers were accompanying me, carrying my gold dust, city blueprints, and such, but they could only take me as far as the classroom. Riarda had on a worried expression as she handed me my things one by one. My lady, is this not too heavy for you? There is still the gold dust for you to carry. I'm quite all right, I replied. These are my own belongings. I need to be able to carry them myself. In truth, the blueprints, gold dust, and face stones were quite a struggle for me to carry on my own. It was only having to bring them all at once because I had blasted ahead of the rest of the class. Pretty much everyone else would gradually bring in new items as they progressed through the course, meaning I was the only Archduke candidate having to fight with my luggage. Give him here, Rosemine. That's clearly too much for you to carry on your own, Wolfried interjected. He wasted no time taking the face stone back from me and the gold dust from Yarda. Thank you ever so much, Wolfried. I went past several rows of desks and the little gardens atop them on my way to my own workspace where our stand was already in place. I set down the only thing I was carrying, my blueprints, while Wolfried set down the face stones and gold dust. Good day, Lady Rosemine, Lord Wolfried. Good day, Lady Hannelore. After we greeted up my desk neighbor, Wolfried went off to speak with his own friend. I thanked him for his help as I watched him go, and then Hannelore let out a small giggle. It really was kind of Lord Wolfried to carry your things for you, she said, her eyes full of admiration. I am envious that you have such a wondrous fiancé. I shook my head on instinct. Our relationship certainly didn't warrant any envy or admiration. He only helped me with my luggage because my short stature put me at risk of getting buried under it all. Besides, I am sure Lord Lestalot would help you if you were in a similar situation, no? Hanlore's gaze suddenly became somewhat distant. Well, yes, I imagined he would summon an attendant to assist me. So, in other words, he wouldn't help you. Himself. On a more important note, Lady Rosemine, there is something I wish to ask you. Have you not been visiting the library lately? I was supplying Monitor Schwartz and Weiss yesterday evening and was very surprised when they began calling me Milady. They did what? Oh no. Oh fuck. I exclaimed. It seemed that Hannelore had taken Hortensia's place as their new owner. A new archnoble librarian has been sent to the library, so I was told not to supply Schwartz and Weiss with any more mana until they were hers. So that means... Professor Solange did say that she wanted you helpers to continue helping out, but did she not say anything about you were supplying the two shoe mills with their mana, I asked? There were two librarians now. Surely one of them had been in the reading room, and for Hannelore to have supplied Schwartz and Weiss with enough mana to have become the new master, she must have been there long enough to have been bumped into Hortensia. Solange probably would have said something. I was only there to provide my mana, and, I was in too much of a rush to go to the reading room. To think the Academy has a new librarian, and one who's in the process of taking over Schwartz and Weiss at that. Have your first years not been registered yet? I'm told that's being done during today's lunch break. Holy cow, is it just me or is her timing terrible? Did you not think to consult Professor Solange as soon as they started calling you Milady, I asked? To be honest, I did not consider it a very serious problem. I thought you were to gain ownership as soon as you supplied them with your mana. We both cradled our heads as we grappled with the issue at hand. It was then that a peculiar thought crossed my mind. Hannelore presumably had a great deal of mana as an Archduke candidate and of a greater duchy, but Hortensia was an archnoble from the sovereignty. If she was offering her mana each and every day, then it seemed strange that Hannelore had managed to overtake her so easily. Solange must not have expected a development like this either, or else she would have simply asked us all to stop helping entirely. We need to contact the library to get this sort resolved, I said. You did not mean any harm, Lady Hannelore, and the library did ask for your continued assistance, so I do not imagine this will go poorly. Eglantine then entered, and seeing her reminded me that the tool's change in ownership had involved the royal family. On top of that, Hortensia was the first wife of the Sovereign Knight Commander. Consulting Eglantine before he went to the library would probably be wise. After starting the class and giving out today's instructions, Eglantine came over to direct me since I was ahead of everyone else. I took that opportunity to go all out. Professor Eglantine, I have a question unrelated to the lesson, I said. The decision to change the master of the library's magic tool was made by the royal family, correct? I recall that one member needed to be present when Professor Hortensia was selected as the new owner. Hannelore twitched. It was written on her face that she hadn't known the royal family was involved. It seems that their current owner has... I went on to explain, and when I was done, Eglantine made a show of surprise. Oh my, Lady Hannelore is their current owner? My sincerest apologies, Hannelore said at once, her face now pale. I had no idea what was happening. Indeed, Lady Hannelore did not have any bad intentions, I added, doing my best to back her up. Yes, I can tell she has provided a great deal of mana for the library's sake as you have. I understand why Professor Solange was so glad to have helpers. She smiled. Lady Hannelore, I thank you ever so much for the assistance you have so generously offered. The tension drained from Hannelore's shoulders at once. She had actually been trembling in fear of getting scolded by a member of the royal family. Professor Eglantine, I said, hearing Lady Hannelore's story made me a little curious. Does Professor Hortensia not have as much mana as one would expect? I would have thought that if she were donating mana to Schwartz and Weiss every day, then Lady Hannelore would never have been able to take control, no matter how excellent of an Archduke candidate she may be. But the library has so many magic tools, Hannelore interjected. I imagine that Professor Hortensia has simply chosen to prioritize others for the time being. I cocked my head and thought. Schwartz and Weiss were more or less invaluable when it came to library work, so it's hard to imagine them being set aside for other magic tools. Plus, the royal family was openly pushing for this change of ownership, so surely that was Professor Hortensia's highest priority. I thank you both ever so much for your concern, Lady Rosemine, Lady Handlor, Eglantine said. I am told that in the past, the library needed 3 arch-noble librarians at the very least. There must be a limit to how much one person can do with their mana. I will consult the library to confirm that all is well. Thank you, Professor Eglantine, I replied. Should, Prince Hildebrand be informed too? He was here at the Royal Academy as a member of the royal family, and his pouty remark about how he could have overseen the transfer on his own had immediately come to mind. Fear not, Eglantine assured me. I will keep him updated. That was that then. With her help, I can ensure that my contact with the royal family was kept to a minimum. This decision has been immensely helpful, Professor Eglantine Handlor said. I was unaware that this matter involved the royal family. Had I reported this myself, they might have summoned me to a meeting. It would have thrown my parents and so many others into such a panic. A wave of guilt washed over me. I have the most opportunities to see Lady Handlor, so I should have informed her of what happened. My apologies. Oh no, I should have gone to the reading room and greeted the librarians. That is enough, you two, Eglantine said, giggling at our back and forth. The greatest fault lies with the library for not contacting its helpers. This is nothing for you to worry about so much about. Professor Eglantine, I imagine this will not be relevant for some time, but... I went out to explain the research we were doing into the Divine Protections ritual, then used that opportunity to inform Handlor that we were hoping for Dunkelfelger's assistance. Ehrenfest doing research with Dunkelfelger? They asked in unison, their eyes equally wide. Yes, I replied. Then turned my attention back to Handlor. I am told that many of your duchy's apprentice knights obtained multiple divine protections, and we would sincerely appreciate your help to demonstrate circumstances outside of Ehrenfest. As I am aware, the royal family also considers it important that nobles obtain the divine protections of as many gods as possible. Of course, I was hinting ever so lightly that Anastasius pushed us for us to do exactly that through his official advice. I am sure that Professor Roffin is already familiar with this matter, I continued. We believe that, if we are going to learn about Dunkelfelger's long-standing traditions and organize them as research, then it would be ideal for our 2 duchies to publish our findings together. Naturally, I am not asking for a response here and now. I imagine you will first need to speak with your Ob, so I can wait until a future tea party. Understood, Handler replied. I will consult our Ob. Now that we had settled all of our royal family-related matters, I presented Eglantine with the blueprints I had prepared for class. She examined them for a moment, then said, Lady Rosemine, do you intend to turn the entire city into a library? That is correct, I declared, my chest puffed out. Such is my ideal city. Eglantine gave me a wry smile and muttered, Perhaps, but I cannot say is very realistic. That face she's making, why does she look like a mother hesitating to crush her daughter's nonsensical dreams? She probably is. Well, not a mother, but still. I needed to do something, and with that in mind, I started to explain how the architectural philosophy behind my blueprints. Actually, I think you will find that my city is very realistic indeed. For one, there is proper zoning. The roads and port on the left make the mercantile district where books can be bought from and sold to other lands. On the right is the production district where our own books can be made. This zone here is for entertainment with inns and restaurants for those visiting the library, and now then, shall we begin? She's cutting me off with a smile. Please follow me, Lady Rosemine, Eglantine continued. She then led me to the back of the classroom and into a smaller room that contained only a magic circle. Oh, here we go, guys. Because, there's a reason that you don't know the God of Darkness and Goddess of Light's names. Yeah, and this will be explained. Fill the circle with mana, if you would. Once that is done, you will be graced with the names of the God of Darkness and the Goddess of Light. Wait, really, I asked? The divine names of the supreme gods? What was this about me being graced with the names of the gods instead of them being taught to me? It turns out the supreme gods do not have a singular name, Eglantine explained. There is a tale of a researcher from a time long ago who, in an attempt to learn their names, sought the help of an archduke candidate who had already been granted the privilege. The researcher found the answer he had so desired, only to be engulfed in flames of light and darkness and disappear entirely. Meanwhile, the archduke candidate who had abetted him lost their divine protections and was no longer able to receive the gods' blessings, even when using their names and chants. They were ultimately demoted to an archnoble. What the heck? That's terrifying. I'm going to be in the other room, Eglantine concluded. Return once you have learned their names, and take great care that nobody hears you repeat them. Understood, I replied with a nod. Even when tutoring me, Ferdinand had been very careful not to tell me the names of the supreme gods. That's why. I had wondered why at the time, but now I realized that he had been trying to keep me from dying a horrible death by multi-elemental fire. After confirming that Eglantine was gone, I knelt atop the magic circle, pressed my hands against it, and assumed the usual praying pose. I am one who offers prayer and gratitude to the gods who have created the world. The magic circle wasn't very large, but it didn't seem to be filling up at all, not even when I poured my mana into it. I should have waited until after class to dump all of my mana. My timing is pretty bad too, I guess. Keeping one hand on the magic circle, I grasped at my hip and took one of my kindness-filled rejuvenation potions down in one go. I continued to pour mana into the circle, and eventually a voice began to speak in my head. The names of the supreme gods appeared in my mind with a blast of radiant fire, as though light were searing every letter directly into my brain. Shit, I'm gonna have a hard time pronouncing these names. Shiksantroct, the god of darkness, and Verspread, the goddess of light. The names of the gods are normally so long and such a struggle to remember, but these two burned directly into my brain. I was confident that I would never ever forget them. A mighty king and queen of the endless skies. This is going to be annoying to pronounce. Shiksantroct, the god of darkness, and Verspread, the goddess of light, I muttered on instinct. Not even a beat later, my staff appeared in my right hand all on its own. It happened so suddenly that I couldn't help but cry out, "Yeep!" My staff then rose up into the air and began sucking up the golden flames and black darkness now emanating from the magic circle. Even though it was no longer in my hands, it must have still been connected to me so I could feel the mana flowing into my body. It wasn't necessarily unpleasant, probably because it was my own mana going back into me, but it was certainly strange. I wish you had told me things were going to be this weird ahead of time, Lady Eglantine. As I made my silent protest, the blast of the light was sucked into my staff, and the magic circle became dull in appearance once again. Is that it? I asked myself. I must have spoken too soon, as golden light and black darkness immediately shot out of my staff and came together in a tremendous helix. It rose high into the air until it eventually passed straight through the ceiling and out of sight. What? In an instant, all the mana that had flowed into me and almost all the mana left in my body was sucked out. The change came so suddenly that I wasn't even able to stay on my knees. The next thing I knew, it was flat on the ground. My vision flashed white as though I was experiencing blood loss, which spurred me to reach for and chug another of my kindness-filled rejuvenation potions. As I stayed on the ground waiting to recover, Eglantine's worried voice reached me through the door. "Lady Rosemont, it has been quite some time. Are you okay?" "I expended too much mana and had to use some rejuvenation potions," I replied. "It may take me a short while to recover. Could you wait a bit longer for me to be able to move?" "You cannot move?" she asked, now sounding more panicked. "May I open the door?" "I would rather you not." I could already hear chatter rising behind the door, and the last thing I wanted was for everyone to witness me slumped on the ground, unable to move. No Archduke candidate would want to be seen in such a state. "If you can give me just a moment, then I will recover on my own." "Rosemont, it's me," came another voice, one that I immediately recognized as Wilfred. "Did you collapse?" "I just ran out of mana. I drank a kindness-filled rejuvenation potion, so I should be able to move again soon." "So this is just another one of your episodes?" he asked, sounding a lot more understanding. "All right." I then heard him step away from the door. It seemed like he was consoling Eglantine and telling her that she didn't need to worry. "I think I should be okay now." I shook my legs awake, then slowly stood up. It seemed that I could indeed move again. After smoothing down my skirt and combing through my somewhat disheveled hair with my fingers, I stepped out of the room. "Lady Rosemont, are you well?" Eglantine asked. "I'm quite all right," I replied. "It just took me some time to recover from having used so much mana at once. More importantly, I have learned the names of the supreme gods. What is the next step of this lesson?" I made sure to give a big smile as I spoke, having to convince her that I could finish the rest of the lesson without incident. Eglantine gave a resigned sigh before carrying my garden into the small room. I was going to be staying in there so that the others wouldn't hear the names of the supreme gods, apparently. "Now then, let us perform an Entwicon," Eglantine said. "This is the magic circle. Entwicon will require all elements." I already knew that much. Ferdinand had hammered it all into me during our tutoring sessions. I needed to chant Stylo to transform my staff and to draw a magic circle in the air of my mana, and then add some gold dust. Once that was done, I would need to chant a spell which adding my blueprints. The paper they were drawn on was a type of magic tool brewed out of mana. "Take care to draw the magic circle large so that you do not overlook any mistakes," Eglantine noted. "After that, adjust its size such that it fills the size of your buildings. Or fits the size of your buildings." She handed me a list of written instructions and exited the room. I performed Entwicon as per the sheet that Eglantine had given me, constructing my ideal city within the garden. From this angle, it looked just like what Ferdinand had made the monastery, albeit on a much smaller scale. "Professor Eglantine," I called, "I'm done." "Oh my, you finished in one go? Let us make the border gate then." Eglinton placed an example garden next to mine so that we could practice. Border gates were a joint effort that could only be made with the approval of the Archduke of two neighboring duchies. Both parties were essentially using magic circles to create and then preserve a hole in the barrier between their lands. Border gates are left open so they can be passed through, Eglinton said, but as country guards, gates can only be opened with the permission of the king and the Ob. They are generally left closed. Erinfest has a country gate on its east side, I believe. Have you seen it before? No, but I will soon be visiting Kernberger, where our country gate is located. I intend to see it then. After safely making my garden's border gate, I was done with my Archduke candidate lesson. I had completed it almost as quickly as anyone could. Dang. Okay, think I'll end this one off here. I will see everybody in the next one.